the remains of a tiny decaying mushroom. It seems so insignificant. It seems so lonesome, maybe dangerous. But this tiny little mushroom has a tail far greater than any of us could ever imagine. At the moment, I only see one. But if you were to see a group of them, 3, 4, 5, 10, however many you see, you'll probably find that if you dig deep enough, they're actually all connected. You're just looking at the head of a much greater organism, mycelium. It lives underneath the ground. It grows like a network. And it has such enormous purpose that most likely we wouldn't be around if it wasn't for these tiny, tiny little organisms. We're only just beginning to understand what they entail. And I suppose you're wondering, why am I talking to you about mushrooms when there's so many more things going on in the world? And, what has this got to do with our financial economic system? But the truth is, there is correlation, there is a relationship. And allow me to explain. So this tiny little mushroom, which is connected through a network underground that we cannot see on the surface, that will pop up only under the right circumstances to show itself and to try to spread, has a fantastic relationship with this giant sequoia. And not just this giant sequoia, this tree is phenomenal. This tree in particular, less than 170 years old, is still a baby. They can live up to roughly 3,000 years, maybe even longer. We're not really too sure. And you start wondering, well, what does this tiny mushroom have to do with this giant tree? And not just this giant tree, but almost all trees. So many trees have this relationship with mycelium, with these mushrooms. And the relationship is that they have a symbiotic relationship. The trees produce nutrients for the mushroom or for the mycelium, and the mycelium, with its network underground, can transfer nutrients from one tree to another. They can almost like a type of communication, almost like a type of relationship that they can have with not just their own species, but other species. And, well, what does this have to do with the financial system? Well, you can almost imagine that this giant tree, which again is still a baby, is almost like a city. It has its own root system, trying to extract nutrients from the ground near itself. It has these branches that extract the light and gain energy through photosynthesis. They have their branches, which cover a certain area. They have their own network system, but they cannot survive solely on the nutrients that its own roots take up or the sunlight that it gets from its leaves. It has to depend on these mushrooms, on this mycelium. Without it, it would surely die. And so you can almost imagine it like a city where it can grow. It will start off tiny. To think that this giant tree was once upon a time a tiny little seed, and it started growing and got bigger and bigger. And that's pretty much like how all our cities grow. They start off really small and they get larger and larger, but eventually to a point where they need nutrients from more than just itself. They start consuming more than what it can actually get from itself. And to be honest, even these giant trees, as babies, as tiny little saplings, they depend on the mycelium. They produce nutrients. These giant trees produce nutrients for the tiny little babies, for their tiny little offspring. And so where I'm going with this is that if you imagine a tree to be like a city, to be its own network, but that they depend on other cities. And if there was no way of getting that nutrients across from one city to another, then surely that city would die. And so this is where we need a kind of like monetary system, you can almost imagine the mycelium as a monetary system transferring nutrients from one place to another. And this is where I want to actually introduce the idea that, right now we live in a terrible, terrible financial system in terms of the amounts of friction that is involved with getting the nutrients from one city to another. When one city produces products and ships it off overseas, the commission that they have to pay, the time that it takes for the banking system to register this transaction, the difficulties in understanding what foreign transaction fees we should be paying, can settle within not just days but potentially weeks. We need something far superior, and this is where I think that Bitcoin answers this question, where it's almost zero, close to $0. It's a minimal transaction fee. We're talking about dollars for transferring almost any amount of monetary value. This makes it a far superior monetary system for global transactions, and within an hour it could be settled on the layer 1 Bitcoin network. Within an hour, within 60 minutes, its final settlement. Whereas the current financial system is days, maybe weeks, huge transaction fees. They need to figure out which exchange rate they should be using. This is just so archaic. And our cities are dying because of this inefficiency. This mycelium, these mushrooms, have mastered the ability to transfer nutrients from one tree to another. They've mastered it. And Bitcoin is this answer. Bitcoin is the solution for governments to transfer wealth from one nation to another when necessary. Think of the mycelium like the Bitcoin network. The ability to transfer nutrients, the ability to transfer monetary value from one to another. This tiny, tiny little mushroom, which seems so insignificant. We could look at Bitcoin and think it's just a blimp on the radar, that it means nothing, that it is only used for criminals, which couldn't be further from the truth, has a purpose. This Bitcoin has a purpose on the national, global scale, on the stadium of the world, and even on a personal level, there are network layers built on top of Bitcoin, like the Lightning Network, which is a layer 2 solution, which can be used for much smaller transactions, which can be near zero, far cheaper than the base layer, and it's instant. So the way I see it, nations will be using Bitcoin as a first layer solution, transferring large sums of money from one nation to another for dollars per billions. The fee would be $1, $2, $3, very small amounts for transferring billions of dollars. The current financial system is not capable of doing that. And the second layer solution is for the individuals who are transferring wealth between themselves, between family and friends, between when they go grocery shopping, for their everyday lives. That would be for the Lightning Network. So I just wanted to share that thought with you, and how fascinating the relationship between the mushroom and this giant sequoia, that they cannot live without each other, that they depend on each other. And cities depend on a sound monetary system. We're seeing global catastrophes around issues that shouldn't be issues. These two evolve together. And absolutely, we can evolve in cities alongside Bitcoin. Just wanted to share their thoughts. Leave your comments in the section, in in the comment section below. My name is Greg. Hit the like button, share, and subscribe. And I guess I will see you around.